Halo 2 is an iconic masterpiece, a game that remains just as fun and engaging to play as it was back when it first released in 2004. Back then, it took over the world by storm, generating some of the most hype ever seen for a video game and continuing to revolutionize the way we played console shooters. It was a landmark title that continued to push the gaming industry forward, and it remains one of the most beloved video games of all time. It followed on the heels of Halo Combat Evolved, a game that revolutionized the FPS genre and made console shooters a viable option. Through the use of aim assist, proper control tuning, and addictive combat, the first Halo was able to create a satisfying gameplay experience that made it easy and fun to pick up and play again and again. The game also introduced us to these interesting characters in Cortana and Master Chief, as well as the militaristic and religious Covenant and the parasitic horde known as the Flood. It told a fascinating narrative that tied together all of the amazing gameplay and events that took place over the course of the game, something that was not common in first-person shooters back in 2001. It took us on a journey across this mysterious ring floating in space, fighting hordes of aliens and parasites as we struggled to survive. We learned how to use our regenerating shields to our advantage during firefights, which weapons were the most effective for taking down which enemies, and why we should all be afraid of the Flood. Combat Evolved literally laid the foundation of the Halo universe and established the core Halo formula that we all know and love today. When it came time to make a sequel to this extraordinary game, Halo's developer Bungie was ambitious. They didn't want the next game to just be more of the same thing. They wanted it to be bigger and better than the original. They set out to make a game worthy of following up one of the greatest and most revolutionary video games of all time, and they managed to do just that. While the road to get there may have been long and filled with development issues, the end result turned out to be another masterpiece that, in my opinion, surpasses the original in nearly every aspect. In this video, I'll be taking a look back at Halo 2's campaign and examining what it is that makes it so fantastic. I'll be discussing the gameplay changes and improvements that were made from Combat Evolved to Halo 2, as well as the excellent narrative that once again ties it all together. I'll also be making a case for why the Arbiter and the Covenant, not Master Chief and humanity, are the central part of Halo 2's story. So once again, please join me as I take a look back at the campaign of the game that all the ladies like, Halo 2. At first glance, you can already see that Bungie succeeded in making Halo 2 bigger than its predecessor. The game has twice the number of guns available to work with, twice the number of weapons you can shoot at once, and twice the number of characters you can play as. Hell, almost every mission is so big they're essentially split into two parts. Bungie honestly may have taken the two-part of Halo 2 a little too far. In all seriousness though, Halo 2 was significantly bigger than Combat Evolved. The amount of content Bungie was able to fit into these 15 missions is very impressive, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of planned content actually got cut from the game near the end of development. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let's take a look at Halo 2's gameplay and compare it to that of Combat Evolved. The way I see it, Halo's core gameplay remains pretty much the same in Halo 2. You progress through a series of different missions, scavenging ammo and weapons as you fight your way through hordes of Covenant and Flood, occasionally doing things like activating a panel or destroying something. In my previous video on Combat Evolved, I mentioned how simple this formula is, and how the first Halo uses this to its advantage. The gameplay is so fun and addicting that you never really get bored doing the same thing over and over again in different levels. That's part of Halo's charm, and a big part of why these games are so much fun to play repeatedly. Instead of changing or revolutionizing this formula in Halo 2, Bungie decided to refine it. They provided new ways to play the game that made the gameplay feel fresh while essentially remaining the same thing as the first game. New weapons such as the battle rifle, the carbine, and the beam rifle allow you to play more from a distance, and Bungie designed some of the levels to cater to this type of combat. The levels Delta Halo and Regret are prime examples of this, as they are filled with a lot of open space and a lot of Jackal snipers, something that fans of this game know all too well. Dual-wielding weapons was a great feature that increased the amount of damage you could put out at once while simultaneously making you look like an absolute badass. Hijacking vehicles is a highly satisfying feature that made vehicle sections even more entertaining to play through. The Arbiter's stealth ability was probably my favorite new feature, since it allowed you to sneak up on enemies and get the drop on them. Combat Evolved technically had a camouflage power-up that you could find in some of the levels, but Halo 2 allows you to have access to this ability at all times as the Arbiter, albeit with a time limit and a cooldown to keep it from being overpowered. New enemy types also mix things up and provide unique gameplay encounters not seen in the first game. Waves of drones flying at you can drop your shields in a second if you're caught out in the open, so you usually need to find some cover and pick them off one by one. Brutes have their own unique weaponry and behaviors that make them formidable opponents later on in the game. Rampaging brutes are a very dangerous thing and something you definitely want to deal with quickly. These new additions to the game fit right in with the already established gameplay, enhancing the campaign experience significantly. But those new additions were not the only things that refined Halo's gameplay. Things like improved vehicles and better level design took what was done in Combat Evolved and brought it back better than it was before. In my video on Combat Evolved, I made a point of mentioning how most of the vehicles in that game weren't that fun to use compared to later games. The Ghost and Banshee, while serviceable, felt much stiffer and less effective than in Halos 2 and 3. The Scorpion tank had terrible accuracy that was made even worse by its equally terrible fire rate. The Warthog was really the only vehicle that I felt was fun to use in the first game. However, in Halo 2, all of that changed. The Ghost and Banshee were both given a boosting ability and generally just felt more nimble to move around in. The addition of the fuel rod cannon and evasive abilities for the Banshee also makes that particular vehicle much more effective to use, and honestly puts it in the running for my favorite vehicle in the game. The other contender is the Scorpion, which is dramatically improved in Halo 2. Both its accuracy and fire rate are so much better than in Combat Evolved, making it a joy to use and something I always look forward to playing with. This difference in quality is also pretty apparent when you consider the fact that there are 3 different missions in Halo 2 that have a Scorpion, while there's only 1 mission with a Scorpion in Combat Evolved. Bungie was able to take these vehicles, which were okay in the first game, and turn them into highlights of Halo 2. While they technically added 3 new usable vehicles to the game in the Spectre, the Wraith, and the Gauss Warthog, you don't really see them much in the campaign, making the vehicles from the original game the ones you'll use most of the time. Level design was another area that saw significant improvement in Halo 2. While I enjoy many of the missions in Combat Evolved, there are some that can get monotonous and repetitive pretty quickly. In Halo 2, I don't really feel that way about any of the levels. Each level is both visually and mechanically distinct from each other, adding to that feeling of freshness I mentioned earlier. Playing on Outskirts and Metropolis is very different from playing on Sacred Icon and Quarantine Zone, which is very different from playing on Gravemind and High Charity. Even though the basic gameplay loop is the same in every mission, the unique and enjoyable level designs provide different scenarios and arenas to fight through, forcing you to make use of different strategies and weapons. The stories that accompany each mission also make them interesting to play through and explore. Oh, and did I mention this game has another incredible soundtrack? Halo 2 soundtrack is the perfect combination of awesome rock music and emotional and calming background music. Sometimes you get to listen to a nice tune while exploring the ruins of Delta Halo, or while you make your way through the sleek and enormous High Charity before being thrust into action to the sound of epic drums and guitars. While there are a lot of great new tracks introduced in this game that remain some of my favorites in the series, there are also some returning tracks that were modified to make them even more awesome than they were before. For example, the title track received a kick-ass electric guitar remake courtesy of guitarist Steve Vai, something that I think is symbolic of Halo 2's ability to take what came before it and improve upon it. The Halo franchise really has one of the best soundtracks in gaming history, and Halo 2 has arguably the best one of any Halo game. Between the new mechanics, new weapons, new enemy types, and enhanced soundtrack, not to mention the generally improved level design and better vehicle controls, Halo 2 successfully refined Halo's gameplay while keeping the core Halo experience intact. I really do feel Halo 2's campaign is better than the one in Combat Evolved. I love the first Halo, but I think this game does a better job in nearly every aspect. However, one of the things I think Combat Evolved does do better is Legendary difficulty. Anyone who's played Halo 2 before knows how notorious this game's hardest difficulty is. It is punishing from start to finish, constantly challenging you and providing an endless amount of frustration. You die so quickly in this game on Legendary, almost to the point where it's sometimes not very fun to play. Heroic is beautifully done in Halo 2, but the difficulty spike from Heroic to Legendary is quite severe. It's a challenge I'm very proud to have completed multiple times, but I really wish they had made it just a little bit easier. That one issue aside though, Halo 2's campaign is expertly designed and always fun to play through. And another huge part of why that is, at least for me, is the game's story. Before we walk through this game's story and missions, I want to take some time to talk about the Covenant and their great journey, because I think this information is important for fully understanding and appreciating Halo 2's story. When we first played Combat Evolved, we didn't know anything about the Covenant. They were just a bunch of aliens that were trying to kill you, obstacles that you had to take down as you made your way across the Halo ring. We had no idea why they were trying to kill us or why they wanted to activate Halo. While this lack of knowledge added to the mysterious nature of the first game, it was something that ultimately needed to be addressed at some point. That's where Halo 2 came in. In order to give us a better understanding of the Covenant, the former head writer and cinematic director of the Halo games, Joseph Staten, had a unique and brilliant idea. What if there was someone who was in charge of the events of the first game, someone leading the Covenant who failed to stop Master Chief from blowing up Halo? How would that person feel? How would the rest of the Covenant look at him? Those questions led Staten to come up with the idea of the Arbiter, the disgraced Covenant commander from the first game who's given a chance to regain some of his lost honor. By putting the player in the Arbiter's shoes, Bungie was able to give us an inside look at the Covenant, from their politics to their beliefs to their hierarchy. In the opening minutes of the game, we learn more about the Covenant than we do in the entire story of Combat Evolved. Among this wealth of new information, we learn about something called the Great Journey, which seems to hold some sort of religious significance for the Covenant. Over the course of the game, we learn a little bit more about what this Great Journey entails, but we never really get the full picture. All we really know by the end of the game is that the Covenant believe that activating the Halo rings will bring about some sort of salvation. This is where some of the outside lore can paint a fuller picture of what's going on during these Halo games. The Covenant worship the Forerunners, who built the Halo rings, as divine beings. They believe that the Forerunners were able to transcend the physical limitations of the universe and become gods by activating the Halo rings in a process they referred to as the Great Journey. They also believe that the Forerunners left behind their technology so that those chosen inheritors could follow in their footsteps and become gods themselves. The Covenant was formed on the belief that they were the chosen inheritors, and that all who walk the path of the Forerunners and believe will be able to ascend to godhood. The truth is that the earliest members of the Covenant misinterpreted what the Forerunners left behind, oblivious to what the true purpose of the Halo rings actually was. However, no one in the Covenant realizes this until right before the Human-Covenant War. To put it simply, 3 members of the Covenant learned from a Forerunner AI that newly discovered Forerunner artifacts were actually humans, and that those humans were the true chosen inheritors of the Forerunner's technology. The Covenant firmly believe that all who have faith in the Covenant's mission will ascend to godhood, and that no one will be left behind, but the presence of humans goes against that very belief. If these humans, who those 3 Covenant members believed were either descendants of the Forerunners or were surviving Forerunners themselves, didn't ascend with the rest of the Forerunners when the Halo rings were last activated, then not everyone will ascend if the rings are activated again. Knowing that this information would destroy the Covenant, those 3 members silence the AI, stage a coup to gain power, become the prophets of truth, mercy, and regret, and declare a holy war against humanity to ensure that that information never becomes public knowledge. Their efforts lead to the Human-Covenant War, a bloody conflict that sees billions of humans and Covenant forces killed over a 28-year period. In Halos 1 through 3, we basically play through the final weeks and months of that terrible war, a war that was literally built on a lie. The events of Halo 2 are essentially the unraveling of that lie. When Master Chief blows up the Halo ring in the first game, the Covenant are beside themselves because they believe they've lost their chance to embark on the Great Journey. The elite in charge is held responsible and branded a heretic because he failed to protect the holiest of objects. He's ultimately given a second chance by the same men that have been lying to him and the rest of the Covenant for almost 3 decades. They take advantage of his situation to manipulate him into finding Delta Halo's index and silencing any who would speak out against the Covenant. What the prophets don't realize is that they ultimately set the Arbiter down a path that leads him to uncover the very truth they've been trying to hide. Their misguided actions bring about the downfall of the Covenant, and the events of Halo 2 basically set the stage for that downfall. When you consider all this information about the Covenant and their great journey, you begin to realize that Halo 2 isn't about Master Chief and humanity. While Master Chief and humanity are obviously huge parts of this game and obviously the focus of the trilogy as a whole, Halo 2 is mainly about the Arbiter and the Covenant, about who they are, what they believe in, and how that all falls apart. It's a story about the Arbiter's journey from humiliated commander to unexpected hero and savior of both the elites and humanity. It's a story about redemption and righting the wrongs of an organization that began with somewhat good but misguided intentions but was manipulated to serve the purposes of a select few. It's a story I didn't know I wanted to see at the end of Combat Evolved, but one that I think needed to be told. As I'll demonstrate next, the Arbiter's story arc and missions serve as the cornerstone for the entire game's narrative. Like I mentioned just a few moments ago, Halo 2 is more about the Arbiter and the Covenant than it is about Master Chief and humanity. This is reflected in both the narratives of the main characters and their respective missions. Halo 2 opens with one of my favorite sequences in all of gaming. It begins in the aftermath of Combat Evolved, with a recently destroyed Halo ring floating in space while the Covenant Armada is stationed nearby. We see the elite in charge of protecting the ring answering for his failures before the Covenant prophets and council, giving us our first inside look at the Covenant. The elite's name is Thel 'Vadamee, and he is ultimately branded a heretic for his inability to safeguard Halo. He's brought before the rest of the Covenant, bound and stripped of all his armor, and publicly humiliated. He's meant to serve as an example for the rest of the Covenant so that everyone would would know the price of failure. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Master Chief is celebrated as a hero for his part in saving the galaxy from the threat of the first Halo ring. The cutscenes go back and forth between Master Chief's celebration and Thelvadomy's humiliation. It's this duality of praise and punishment for what ultimately ends up being the two main characters that makes this opening sequence so interesting for me. It demonstrates just how zealous the Covenant is in their pursuit of the Great Journey, how humanity is trying to celebrate its victories even as it slowly loses the war, and it prepares players for what they can expect out of the game's story moving forward. First, let's start with Master Chief and his missions. His contribution to Halo 2's story is basically killing the Prophet of Regret. The first 3 missions of the game involve you as Master Chief defending Earth from Regret's forces, while his second set of missions involves hunting down and killing the Prophet. These opening missions are great for getting players familiar with some of the game's new weapons and mechanics, and ultimately serve as a good warm-up for the rest of the game. There's a lot of great close-quarter encounters, fun vehicle sections where you get to try out the new and improved Scorpion and the new Gauss Warthog, and some very entertaining dialogue from Sergeant Johnson. The first mission also ends with probably one of the most iconic cutscenes in all of gaming, with Master Chief taking a Covenant bomb off of Cairo Station, flying through space, and using the bomb to blow up a Covenant cruiser. It's such a Halo thing to do, and really sets the bar high early on. This section then concludes with one of the coolest fights in the Halo series. You're given all these powerful weapons and a high vantage point so that you can board a Covenant Scarab and take it out from within. The sequence is unlike anything you encounter in Combat Evolved, and serves as a great example of how Halo 2 improves upon its predecessor's gameplay. Once the Scarab is destroyed, the Prophet of Regret begins jumping into slip space in the middle of New Mombasa. Master Chief and his allies pursue in their ship, which leads them to discover another Halo ring. The next 2 Master Chief levels are Delta Halo and Regret, and they're probably my 2 favorite levels in the entire game. Both are very visually pleasing, allowing you to explore these old ruins and look out on this gorgeous lake and skybox. They also have some really fun gameplay, allowing you to once again mow down Covenant in the newly improved Scorpion tank, and make use of the new ranged weapons to take down the pesky Jackal snipers that are stationed everywhere. They're just really solid levels that provide some of my favorite gameplay in Halo 2. This section ends with one of the most hilarious boss fights in all of gaming. You confront the Prophet of Regret and his honor guards and take them down all by yourself. By making use of the game's new hijacking feature, you're able to board Regret's hover chair and beat the ever-loving crap out of him, which is hilarious every time I do it. It's a great way to cap off Regret's story arc and ultimately conclude Master Chief's contribution to Halo 2's story. The last 2 Master Chief missions, Gravemind and High Charity, don't really add anything to the overall story. While they are fun to play through and well designed, Master Chief ultimately accomplishes nothing except return to Earth and leave Cortana behind. Killing the Prophet of Regret is really the last significant thing that he does in this game, adding to the idea that Halo 2 is really more about the Arbiter, whose missions contain the bulk of the important events and cutscenes. The Arbiter's first set of missions involves him hunting down and eliminating a rogue elite who has been speaking out against the Covenant and the Great Journey. This is his first mission after being appointed the newest Arbiter, and his first chance to regain some of his lost honor. The irony of the situation here is that he eventually becomes the man he goes on to kill. By eliminating this elite and capturing 343 Guilty Spark, the Arbiter comes to learn the truth about the Halo rings, the truth that this rogue elite have been trying to warn the rest of the Covenant about. By the end of Halo 2, the Arbiter goes on to assume the role of the man he kills in these missions, and leads the elites as they break away from the Covenant. The levels Arbiter and Oracle are probably the most interesting ones in the entire game. You not only get to play as an elite for the first time, you also get to fight against members of the Covenant that no longer believe in the Great Journey. It's a clash of ideals that's fascinating to watch as you make your way through both levels and confront the rogue elite leader. These levels also contain some really cool sections, like the Banshee section where you get to fly around the station, and the Sword section where you cut the station's cables in order to get to your target. The Arbiter's second set of missions begins with an event called the Changing of the Guard, where the Brutes replace the elites as honor guards of the Prophets. After the death of the Prophet of Regret, the Prophet of Truth declares that the elites are no longer fit to serve as the guards of the Prophets, which leads to this changing of the guard. This event is significant because it's the spark that leads to the civil war between the Brutes and the elites, which then ultimately leads to the elites learning the truth about Halo and breaking away from the Covenant. After witnessing this exchanging of hats, the Arbiter is tasked with finding the index that will activate Halo. You must fight your way through an army of Flood and Sentinels as you make your way through a series of facilities and outdoor areas that are very reminiscent of the first Halo. It's really cool exploring these levels, but they're probably among my least favorite levels in the entire game, mainly because of how great many of the other levels are. When you finally reach the index, Tartarus appears to take the sacred icon and ultimately betray you. Before he pushes him to his supposed death, Tartarus tells the Arbiter that the Prophets were the ones that told the Brute to kill him. This turns the Arbiter's world upside down and leads him to question everything he knows about the Covenant and the Great Journey, which prepares him for his meeting with the Gravemind. This is one of the most pivotal cutscenes in all of Halo 2 because it sets the Arbiter on the path of discovering the truth. Even though both the Arbiter and Master Chief are brought before the Gravemind in this scene, Master Chief already knows what the Halo rings do. This meeting isn't for him, it's for the Arbiter. This scene also lets us as the players know that the Flood apparently have some sort of leader, who eventually goes on to become one of the main villains of Halo 3. After explaining the situation to them, the Gravemind sends both characters to different areas to find the Index and stop Halo from firing. Chief goes to High Charity, and the Arbiter goes to Delta Halo's control room. The Arbiter's final two missions of the game do an excellent job of wrapping up his journey and setting the stage for the final game in the trilogy. In addition to some really beautiful environments and fun gameplay sections, these levels let us see the Covenant unraveling firsthand. The Brutes and Elites are engaging in an all-out civil war, and the other members of the Covenant are forced to pick a side. One of the coolest things about these levels for me is that you actually get to fight alongside some of the hunters that you come across. It's such a surreal moment in the game, especially after having to fight all those hunters in Combat Evolved and earlier on in Halo 2. Before he can confront Tartarus, the Arbiter is forced to team up with Sergeant Johnson and his commandeered Scarab in order to break down the doors leading to the control room. Once he's inside, he finally learns the truth. Halo is a weapon that will wipe out all sentient life in the galaxy so that the Flood don't spread. The Forerunners who built and activated the rings died as a result, a complete contradiction to everything the Covenant believes. What's interesting here is that the Arbiter and Tartarus come to two different conclusions after hearing this. The Arbiter accepts the truth and realizes that the Prophets have betrayed the rest of the Covenant, while Tartarus refuses to believe the supposed Oracle of the Forerunners and activates the ring anyway. This leads to one final boss battle against Tartarus and his brutes, which ultimately ends the game and sets up the story for Halo 3. The Arbiter began the game as the disgraced Covenant commander who couldn't protect one of the sacred rings, but he ends the game as both a savior and an ally of humanity. He embarked on a journey that brought him face to face with the truth about his own religion and beliefs, and instead of losing hope or refusing to see reason, he rises to the occasion and restores honor not only to himself, but to the position of the Arbiter as well. It's once again a story I didn't know I wanted to hear after playing Combat Evolved, but one that, in the end, needed to be told. Before I close out this video, I do want to quickly discuss the development issues that I mentioned a while back. As I said earlier, Bungie was very ambitious in their vision for Halo 2. They wanted it to be bigger and better than the original, and they had a whole host of ideas as to how to make that happen. Unfortunately, their ambition led to a lot of development issues. Many of the ideas they had were either too difficult to implement at the time or required way more work than they had time to implement. During the final year of development, Bungie had to make some tough choices and ended up cutting some of the content from the campaign. This wasn't just things like new weapons and vehicles, entire missions and cutscenes were cut so that they could create a more or less cohesive story and finish the game on time. With a lot of hard work and dedication, they were still able to tell a phenomenal story even after cutting potentially as much as a third of the game's cutscenes and missions, though it resulted in a cliffhanger that left many people upset. It's another great example of a what if in gaming. What would Halo 2 have looked like if that story content hadn't been cut? From my understanding, there were plans to have Master Chief confront the Prophet of Truth, then return to High Charity to save Cortana and fight against the Gravemind. These are things that obviously happen in Halo 3, but it's interesting to think about them happening in Halo 2 instead. Ultimately though, I think it's better that things ended up the way that they did. I've never had a problem with the way Halo 2 ended, and I probably consider Halo 3 to be my favorite Halo game overall. Halo 2 did all the right things in my eyes and has been a constant source of joy and entertainment for me over the last 17 years. It successfully managed to refine the core Halo experience that was introduced in Combat Evolved, and it expanded the Halo universe in interesting and unexpected ways. It truly is a masterpiece of a game, and one that I will continue to enjoy for many years to come. But our work isn't done yet. So far we've taken a look back at the campaigns of Combat Evolved and Halo 2, but every trilogy needs to have an ending. In the next video, it's time to finish the fight. Stay tuned for a look back at the campaign of Halo 3.